welcome to Global News Today here on Arabiya English with me, your host, Prendergast. And coming up in today's show, I'm joined by Kwasi Kwarteng, the former UK Chancellor, who's here to discuss Trump's favourite word, tariffs, as well as the political situation in the UK. But first, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by world pool champion Fedor Gorst, who joins us live from Saudi Arabia, where he's defending his World Pool Championship. You're about to defend your world title in Saudi Arabia. How is your mindset going into this compared to when you first won it in Saudi last year?
I feel like my mindset is in a better place this year than last year or 2 years ago, even like 5 years ago when I won it the first time. You know, I was a unexperienced, unmatured player, I would say. Now I feel like my game, my mindset is in a different place. I feel like I've matured a lot throughout the years, and I feel like I'm more prepared than last year.
You've played in Saudi Arabia before. What was that experience like on and off the table?
You know, I've played there last year, was my first time, and really the arena is sick. You know, it's a big arena. You're playing under bright lights. The atmosphere starting from the last 16 was amazing. The fans were super supportive, and I expect nothing but the same this year. You know, I'm ready.
Do you see Saudi Arabia becoming a global hub for Q sports over the next decade, especially with Saudi hosting the World Cup in 2034?
Yes, I think there's definitely a possibility of seeing champions in the next decade or so. Like you said, coming from Saudi, you know, we're going to be playing world championships and maybe possibly more tournaments now in Saudi for many, many years now. And obviously, that's creating that buzz around the game here and around our sport. And hopefully it's going to encourage more and more locals to start practicing and maybe one day become a world champion.
In 2024, you made history by winning the World Pool Masters, the WPA World 9-Ball Championship, as well as the US Open. What keeps pushing you after such a dominant year?
You know, finding motivation is always probably the toughest thing for athletes. And for me to be staying hungry, it's not really about, you know, the money. It's not really about the titles. It's really about the game. And as long as I'm passionate about the game and I just enjoy myself playing, I can only enjoy myself playing when I play good. And when I feel that I, you know, have a bad day or a bad week, bad month, it only pushes me to practice and practice more. So I guess my mistakes is my motivation.
Do you ever let yourself imagine being considered the greatest pool player of all time? Is that a goal that you're chasing? Is it something that helps to keep you motivated?
No, this is not a goal that I would like to chase. Really, it's I don't know. It doesn't really match my personality, I would say. It's not the goal that I will be going after.
Now that you're representing Team USA in the Mosconi Cup, after becoming US citizen, how does it feel going against Team Europe, especially once having played for them?
No, it's just more fun for me, I would say. You know, it's a different experience. You know, instead of being a favorite in the match before the match starts, you're being an underdog, and you know, the teams are completely different. It's a different vibe playing in different teams. Also, the way you know, their approach and stuff. I wouldn't say I feel like different pressure or anything. I would just say it's a different experience, and I like this one, playing for the Americans, a lot better than playing for the Europeans.
Pool is seeing a major growth online. How has that impacted your career and the way fans engage with you?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of hype around the game. It's been on social media the last 2 years, and I'm trying to grow my social media as well. And I can see that there's a lot of interest from the younger generation people online. So I think it affected me in a good way. There's a lot of attention coming from even from the outside of the industry now coming to pool. So I think it's going to help our sport to grow overall.
And how many hours are you practicing a day when you're in your full prep mode?
Yeah, just like anything, they say you have to practice 10,000 hours. You got to spend 10,000 hours to do anything, to become a professional at anything in life. And really, I didn't count how many hours I've practiced in my life, but I would guess it's more than that. Now, how much I practice now, it really depends on my schedule. Like you said, no off season. We don't really have the off season. The majors are almost happening every 2 months, and then you have the smaller tournaments, so you're basically staying on the road all the time. And when I do that, I try to practice less just to stay in shape physically. You don't want to burn out just because you want to get better and practice 8 hours a day. But I can say that when I was younger, when I was in my 16, 18s, I was practicing a lot, even living back in Russia. I used to practice 8, 10 hours a day, skipping school at times. I was just very, very eager to learn and hungry to become the champion, I would say.
And are you following a fitness or recovery routine to stay sharp, both physically and mentally?
Yeah. I work with a few different physiotherapists, I would say. I don't know what's the right word for it. I have a team. I have a pre-match routine that I do. Usually, we stretch a lot because pool players are dealing with back pain all the time. It's a one-sided sport. I would say, just same as golf or archery. Nothing too crazy. We don't work a lot with weights. It's a lot of, I would say, yoga type, light weights, a lot of work with resistant bands, yoga blocks, myofascial release balls and stuff like this.
And what's the best match that you've ever played, and what made it special?
Probably the finals of the World Championships last year. Was the biggest prize that I won of my career, and also the way I won the tournament was so special for me because I came from behind in so many matches, including the finals. So I think it was just the biggest match that I've played in my career so far.
So obviously there's a lot of pressure involved in these finals. Is there any way that you can prepare for that?
I mean, there's no really preparation. You can't really say that you got to do A and B and then you'll get X and Y. I would say what helps me the most is breathing, conscious breathing, just learning how to breathe, to calm myself down in those situations when the pressure is super high. Also trying to recreate somewhat pressure during practice sessions, just to, rely on fundamentals when it's needed. And, just trying my best and learning from my mistakes, learning from my losses, and analyzing what went wrong, helping me go further and further.
What's the worst match that you've ever had, and what did it teach you?
The worst match probably was the European Open, I would say, in 2023. I was playing against Josh Filler, and I was first on the hill. We were playing a race to 10, and I was up 9-8, and I missed the 9 ball to win. I missed the final ball to win the match, and I ended up losing the match. I remember just walking back, through the back door of the building because I was trying to avoid all the fans, just to go straight back to my room, just head down, hood on my head. It was raining outside, just like in movies. So that loss I remember probably the most.
And if you weren't a professional pool player, what do you think you'd be doing for a living?
Good question. Probably be a graphic designer.
You were on Joe Rogan's podcast. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of that. What was the experience like behind the scenes?
He's a pool maniac. He's a big fan of pool. He's got 2 pool tables in his studio. He's got about, I don't know, hundreds of different cues. We chat always about pool. He's always very supportive. He's watching all of my matches. So he's just a really cool guy overall.
Did you get to play Joe, and did he win any racks himself?
Yeah, we've played for like 3 hours.
And how did he do?
Yeah, he was winning in the beginning. It's a high pressure for me to play against a guy like that. I don't know if you follow what Fargo rating is. If I had to rate him, I would give him like, I don't know, 650 Fargo.
He's talked about that he's wanted to stream at pool matches himself from his studio in Texas. He wanted to get you involved, as well as many others. Obviously, he has an enormous following. Has there been any follow-up on that idea?
Well, I reminded him a couple of times, but I just think that Joe is just a super busy guy. He's career in the UFC, plus he's super busy with his own podcast now. I just don't see where he can find time for anything pool related, but I think when he does, he will definitely do that because it's his passion.
You've been spotted playing chess as well. Do you see any similarities between playing chess in terms of strategy and how you read on the pool table?
Who spotted me? Well, I do that rarely, and I wouldn't say that I'm a good chess player myself, but I grew up in Russia, and it was super popular, just the game itself. You could walk around on the street and you could see chessboards everywhere, and everybody it was just I don't know, a fashion thing, or it was the thing. Everybody was playing chess. So I was learning the game when I was a kid. And now I just, in pool, there is a correlation with chess because you got to think ahead, 2 balls ahead, 3 balls ahead, 5 balls ahead, sometimes more. And in chess, it's the same thing. You got to predict what your opponent is going to do. And, I just like the tactics.
And who's on your personal all-time Mount Rushmore of pool?
Efren Reyes, Earl Strickland, Shane Van Boning, and probably Francisco Bustamante.
And who were your idols growing up?
It was actually Niels Fine, the player from Netherlands. I was following him in pool, and in tennis it was always Rafa Nadal. Just they're similar personalities, both super hardworking guys, and both never give up. Maybe that's why I like both of them.
As a pool fan, as a kid, of course I remember at Ronnie OSullivan, he was playing with Steve Davis in the Moscone Cup. Or would you like to face off against snooker players, and have you ever played against Ronnie OSullivan?
No, I've never played against Ronnie, and I really don't play any snooker. Actually, the last time I've played probably was 5 years ago or so. So, no.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. The very best of luck in the tournament, Fedor, the World Pool Champion. Thanks so much for your time here on Arabiya English.
Thank you so much, Michael.
President Trump has suggested that a UK-US trade deal could eliminate the need for tariffs. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd be surprised if he eliminated them altogether. But there's no question that I think with the UK, that tariff level might be very low. I think in the region of 10%, could even be lower. But I think it'd be very hopeful, very optimistic to suppose that that would be zero. I think there'd be some, forgive me, element of a tariff. But we just have to wait and see what that level is.
And in regards to China, obviously Trump is having more of a protectionist angle. How do you see in the future as this trade war continues? A trade war is good for no one. Do you think he'll attempt to continue to try and bully China in that way?
No doubt in my mind that Trump is trying to exert maximum pressure on China. He feels that China's been a bad actor in international trade. And he's using the threat of tariffs essentially to make sure that they become good actors and, in his view, behave properly. Now, where it all ends, we don't know, because China itself is a major power and has some influence in this. But I don't think they want to see high tariffs on their goods as they export them into the US. And I don't think the US consumer wants to pay any extra or considerably more than they need to. So tariffs, I think, are a zero-sum game for the Americans and the Chinese. But Trump is clearly using the threat of tariffs to try and get China to modify their behavior.
And in regards to another emerging market, we're going to look at India. Despite a significant withdrawal of foreign investments from Indian equities in 2025, sectors like telecom and the financial services are still attracting substantial investment. What does this indicate about India's economic prospects?
I think India's got a very good tech base. You got some very good engineers, very good technical sort of specialists in things like AI, fintech, and other areas. And I think the movements in the stock market reflect that kind of strength, you know, in terms of the labor market, the very highly educated workforce in tech, in particular, in AI, digital. And I think that the stock exchange perhaps reflects that.
We're going to turn to Africa now. The economic growth is projected to surpass the global average for this year. East Africa is leading at 5.9%. However, challenges like inflation, currency volatility, as well as political uncertainty persist. What role do you see the UK in supporting Africa's economic development?
I think the UK has a vital role in that. Clearly, successive British governments have been committed to giving aid to Africa. There are lots of historical links, as many of your viewers will know, through the British Empire many decades ago. Most of Africa is English-speaking. There's the Francophone part, but the British English-speaking part is probably the majority. So there are lots of reasons why Britain should be very much at the forefront of African development. And you're quite right. The natural resources story in Africa, everyone knows about. I mean, that's a huge potential for economic growth. That has huge potential to drive economic growth. But of course, there are difficulties. There's political instability, although I think that's a lot less now than it was maybe 20 years ago. And I think that, you know, there are currency fluctuations, and there are also other challenges in terms of the rule of law and anti-corruption drives. But I think the situation in Africa is much more attractive now than it has been in many years.
Turning back to UK affairs, how do you think Rachel Reeves is doing in her position as Chancellor?
Look, I think she's under a lot of pressure. I think they made some serious mistakes right at the beginning. I think the first thing they did, I think, was do a much more generous package for the trade unions in terms of pay than many people anticipated. People like junior doctors, I think, got 22% over 3 years when the inflation rate was running at about 2.5%, 3% a year. There were other aspects of the public sector that were given that kind of support. And in order to pay for it, the Chancellor announced, you know, £40 billion of tax rises in the budget last year. Now, most of that, I think about 25 billion, was going to be paid by business people, by employers. They've tightened the non-dom rules on, you know, people earning money from overseas. So a lot of wealthy people are now leaving the country. And I think this autumn, because they couldn't get the welfare reforms that they wanted, they couldn't cut the welfare bill in the way the Chancellor had anticipated, they're going to have to raise even more taxes. That's the most likely outcome. And we have to wait and see what those tax rises, where they will fall. And
those tax rises, it appears to be a vicious circle. The higher they raise tax, for example, targeting non-DOMs, they're leaving in their droves over to Saudi Arabia. At the moment, that they have just lessened their laws on people being able to buy property there, foreign investors. This is a trend we're going to continue to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly Liz Truss and even Rachel Reeves talked about the doom loop, which basically means that, you know, you raise taxes, which lowers growth because it lowers incentives and drives away entrepreneurs. And that means you lower growth, and that means you have to raise taxes even more to pay for your spending, the welfare state, essentially. Now, the only two ways you can get out of that is by growing the economy more, probably through lower taxation, less regulation, and also trying to reduce spending. I think that's equally important. But it seems to me that it's very difficult for the Labour government to reduce spending, and they seem to be more inclined to raise taxes, which I think will make the problem worse. That's the doom loop.
And of course, Starmer, he himself has made some peculiar decisions. For example, the one that even I couldn't fathom was in his first few months in power, one of the first taxes was the winter fuel bill to target pensioners. What was the thinking there?
Yeah, that was very weird. I think what they were trying to do, what the Chancellor was trying to do, was to show how tough she was on public spending. Because you remember when I was Chancellor and Liz Truss was Prime Minister, we'd cut taxes aggressively, but we hadn't, frankly, given a statement as to what spending we would cut. And I think the Chancellor came in and said, right, she's going to be tough on spending. But what they did was announce the removal of the winter fuel payment, which for people outside the UK is a payment of about £300 a year for every pensioner. Now, there's an argument as to whether wealthier pensioners should receive it, but to take it from everybody within about 2 months of coming into power, to me was a huge political blunder. And it was such a blunder that they actually reversed the position after 10 months. They spent 10 months arguing that it was the right thing to do and that they were being tough. And then in the end, they decided to reverse that policy. They wouldn't reduce or remove the winter fuel payment. But of course, that meant that they had to find the money. They will have to find the money that initial policy would have saved. So this is, in a nutshell, is the problem the government's found itself in. It can't reduce spending. It finds it very difficult to do that. Growth is pretty unimpressive, slow. And so in order to pay for the spending, they have to raise taxes. And that's what we will see. That's the movie, if you like, the script we will see over the next few months.
Margaret Thatcher famously said, the lady is not for turning. That doesn't seem to be the case for Rachel Reeves. Do you think she lacks the political will, or is it a form of pragmatism?
Look, I think she's boxed in. I mean, having done the job myself, her room for manoeuvre is pretty limited. She has to essentially work in agreement with the Prime Minister. I think she would have been very reluctant to reverse the policy, but the Prime Minister, I'm sure, would have put pressure on her to do that. And in my view, everything she does, every comma in every statement she makes, is essentially authorized by the Prime Minister. So, you know, they're in lockstep. And if anything should happen to one of them, I think the other will suffer the consequences. So they're joined at the hip. They've got backbenchers who aren't really very supportive, who want a more left-wing agenda, and have shown that they're willing to flex their muscles and vote against government measures. And so they're really boxed in. They're in a very tight spot, even though they've got nominally a very large majority. Politically, they're in a very tight spot. And a lot of what's driving this, and we haven't mentioned them, is the fact that Reform UK are doing very well in the polls. So the government is in a very difficult situation, only 1 year in, and we have to wait and see what happens as to whether they can get out of it.
As you just stated, the Reform is surging in the polls. Do you see this as a protest vote?
Well, it's difficult to say that it is a protest vote. I mean, they did very well in the local elections in May. I looked just recently, they've been ahead in the last 50 or 60 polls. So they've been ahead, I think, the last 2 or 3 months in British polls. So it's probably a little bit too dismissive to say that it's just a protest vote and it'll disappear. Having said that, 4 years is a very long time. That's the time we have to the next election. And of course, you know, they could be under much more scrutiny and pressure. And I'd be surprised, frankly, if in the real poll in 4 years' time, the real election in 4 years' time, I'd be surprised if they do as well as they're doing now. But you know, many things can happen, and they could easily retain their position. I can see that too.
Do you think Labour and the Conservatives have underestimated the working class anxieties over immigration?
Yeah, I think immigration's been a huge factor in this. And also, you've got to understand Reform UK, the British context, isn't that different from what we've seen in the US with Trump, in France with the Le Pen movement, in Italy with Meloni, even in Germany, you've got the AfD. So what I'm describing is a situation where populist right-wing parties have essentially, superseded or eliminated small c conservative parties. And that's something that we're seeing across the Western world at the moment.
Do you think we're ever going to see Nigel Farage as Prime Minister?
I think it could happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but to dismiss that as a possibility, I think, is premature. If you look over the last 10 years, we've had Trump winning the Republican nomination, which seemed unlikely at one point, Trump winning the general election in America twice. You've seen Brexit. You've seen, as I said, across Europe, many of these populist right-wing parties in the Netherlands, to a lesser degree in Germany and France. They've all polled much better than they have done historically. And this is something which is not just a national or one nation phenomenon. It's something that's happening across many countries in the West. And many people are concerned about immigration from, let's face it, the developing world. It's I hate to be blunt about it, but it's about people who look different, maybe with different skin color, coming in large numbers to historically, traditionally, European countries. And that's excited a lot of alarm and concern among many people in those countries.
And if not an out-and-out win for Reform and Nigel Farage, what do you think the possibility is of a coalition between the Tories and Reform?
So actually, I think this is the most likely outcome. I don't think Farage will get a majority. I think the Tories could get a majority, but they would struggle to do that. And so an outcome where you've got some sort of coalition between the Conservatives and Reform is likely. It's just as likely that Labour could have a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, or, in a more strange world, the SNP. So I think that if you look at the odds today, the chances of a hung parliament are probably the strongest of all the other options. And in the context of a hung parliament, that is when no party has a majority, lots of coalitions and possibilities might be formed. So we just have to wait and see. But I think it's unlikely that any of the parties, given the polling at the moment, will get a full working majority.
And at the next election, will we see the likes of yourself and Liz Truss perhaps defect to Reform?
Well, look, I don't know about Liz Truss. I mean, you'd have to ask her yourself. I don't know what her plans are. I won't be standing in the next election. I don't want to go back into the House of Commons. And I am very much a Conservative. We just have to wait and see how things develop and what happens at that election, which I have to remind your viewers is at least 4 years away. So there's still quite a long time.
We're just out of time. At Kwasi Kwarteng, thank you so much for your time here on Arabiya English.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's all we have time for on Global News today. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join us tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.